All right, welcome to today's tutorial. Today, the topic was on graphing non-proportional relationships using the slope and the y-intercept. But before we start, we got to remember that you're going to be given an equation, so you got to remember that the generic form of a proportional relationship is in the form of y equals mx plus b. Now that is very important. I hope you guys have memorized that. Remember that m is going to equal your slope, which is the same thing as your rise over run. Remember, what is slope? What is slope? Rise over run. Rise over run. And then the b value, that equals your y-intercept, which we also call our initial value. Now when you're given an equation, like for example number 1 in the form of y equals 4x minus 1, we have to figure out what the y-intercept is. The y-intercept, if you remember, y equals mx plus b, in this case it's going to be -1. Then we got to figure out our slope. Our slope is always going to be our coefficient for our x value, and in this case the coefficient is +4, which is the same thing as 4 once as a ratio. And you want to write it as a ratio because we're going to use the slope to rise and run, and there's also another way to write that as -4 -1s. And again, you want to do it both ways because as you will see sometimes you're going to get stuck on a graph and you're going to have to go the opposite direction. And so I always tell you guys, write rise over run. So let's use the y-intercept, which is our free point, and that free point is the order pair 0, -1. And that point is right there. So that's where going to be our starting point. Do not start off at the origin. So you know that y-intercept of the order pair 0, -1 is on that line. And so what you're going to do is you're going to use your slope to rise and run from that point the amount that you have for your slope and plot another point there. So let me show you what I mean. Our slope is +4 once, so we're going to rise +4 and run 1, and as you can see I erased it because we don't want those slope triangles, and that placed a point in that area. So I'm running out of space at the top, so I had to use the opposite of -4 as a rise and the run of -1. That way, because our rise is negative, I'm going to go downward, and my run is negative, I'm going to go to the left, and that gives me that point right there. Now remember, the slope is positive, so my line should go up from left to right, and based on the points, it does go up from left to right, and that is the line of the equation 4x minus 1. Now what we can do is we can label our ordered pairs. We got the order pair 1, 4, and down here at the bottom we got the order pair -5, -1. So let's do problem number 2. Once again, figure out the y-intercept and the slope. In this case, the y-intercept is +2. And if you remember last year, that is your constant term. Our slope is part of the variable term. Remember last year? And the coefficient of the variable term is our slope. And in this case, our slope is going to be -1/2. Now, I write it as -1 over 2 because we're going to use the rise and the run. You can also put the negative in the denominator, which give you a positive rise and a negative run. And remember, that's always going to be our rise and run. And we're going to plot our free point, which is the y-intercept, which is +2. And so we plot the order pair 0, 2. Next thing you know, we're going to use our slope from that point to rise. Our slope is -1/2, so we're going to rise -1 and run +2 from that y-intercept. So since our slope is -1, we're going to run down -1, and then we're going to rise. We're going to rise -1, which means going downward, and then we're going to run +2, which is to the right, and that gives us that point there. Once again, our rise is -1, so we're going to go down, and our run is +2. We're going to go to the right, and there's another point. Now let's use the opposite where we put the negative sign in the denominator to give us a rise of +1 and a run of -2. Because our rise is positive 1, we're going to go up 1. And because our run is negative, we're going to go 2 to the left. And that gives us that point. And I'm going to go ahead and do a couple other points. As you can see, that makes a straight line. And so we're going to connect our points. And that is the line of the equation y equals negative x, y equals negative 1/2 x plus 2. Our slope is negative, so our line should go downward from left to right. Our y-intercept is positive 2, so our line should go through positive 2 on the y-axis. Now you can also check your slope using the slope triangles, and you can see from one point to the other our rise is negative 1 and our run positive 2. So we got the correct graph or the correct line, and we can label our order pairs as you are supposed to. And then that completes how to graph linear equations using the slope and the y-intercept, which is the easiest way to graph. Remember, the other way is the table of values, but the table of values is very, very important when it comes to foundational algebra. Thank you for watching this tutorial, and I hope that helped you on your homework. Have a good day or night.